Om Badram Pashe Badram Karanebihi Shunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Ryajatraha Stirairangayir Tushtuvam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Swastinah Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinah Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinah Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti 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 Yo Antah Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akila Shakti Daraswadamnam Anyam Shtahasta Charana Shravanatvagādīn Prāṇān Namo Bhagavate Purushāya Tubhyam Lasatu Śrīmadānanda Tīrtendurno Hrudambare Yadvachashchandrika Swanta Santāpam Vidikrantati Padavakya Pramānajñān Pranamya Shirasa Gurūn Vyakarishye Yatha Bhotam Vishnu Tattva Vinirnayam. So good morning, good afternoon and good evening to friends for the part 11 of Mundaka Upanishad. So where were we? So we are doing the second Khanda. Yeah, last week we did Tadetat Satyam Mantreshu Karmani Kavayo Yani Apashyan Tani Tretayam Bahuda Santatani Tani Acharata Niyatam Satyakamaha Yeshavaha Pantaha Sukrutasya Loke Yada Lela Yatehi Archihi Samidde Havyavahane Tada Ajyabaga Vantarena Ahutihi Pratipadayet. So we are doing the second mantra in the second kind of Mundaka Upanishad. So what did we do last week? We kind of, we are deliberating on how to convert rituals into Paravidya, because we are all very good at rituals. Yeah, we all do a lot of rituals in our daily life, particularly in our philosophical lives, religious lives. We seem to be doing a lot of rituals, but are we actually doing those rituals with a perspective of Paravidya, or are we doing our rituals mechanically? So that's the key question, which was relevant in the Vedic times, and it is also relevant today. And our Guru Angirasa starts off by having this discussion to Shuanaka, and he says that how things were in the Krita Yuga, then how they gradually started deteriorating in the Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and things are pretty bad in Kali Yuga. So that is what he is saying. And let's not forget, these Chatur Yugas is a constant cycle, right? In Vedic cosmology, it is a constant eternal cycle. So it's happening all the time. So Krita Yuga, everything is fine. Yeah, but it starts deteriorating in up to Kali Yuga. Yeah, so that is what Angirasa has told us in the first verse. He said in the Dharma, in the Krita Yuga, was standing on all four legs. And all the jivas were looking at the whole of Vedas as one entity, and they did yajnas as only as Paravidya, celebrating Paramatma. That was in the Krita Yuga. In the Treta Yuga, it started various approaches. Tretayam Bahuda Santatani. So folks started having different approaches. It is not the problem of the Vedas, it is only our problems, because the jivas, as we know, there are three types of jivas, right? Satvika, Rajas, and Tamasas. So that becomes increasingly more and more available in the Krita Yuga, in the Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and it is the worst situation in the Kali Yuga, where there are lots more Rajasika and Tamasika jivas compared to the Satvika jivas. Nevertheless, in the Treta Yuga, what's going on? The yajnas, which are primarily done as an adoration of the Supreme, they got various other ideas fed into it during the Treta Yuga. Folks started doing yajnas for environmental benefit. Folks started doing yajna for individual family benefits, for more wealth, for more cows, for more children, for healthy cattle, for good harvest, and for environment. So those are all the reasons why the yajna started propagating. Not that they are not welcome, but that is not a Paravidya, as we shall see in today's class. And also folks started doing yajnas for other devatas, not the deva, but for other devatas. They started doing yajnas to please them, and hopefully some of them through them started worshipping Vishnu. And then the Vedas started getting separated into Paravidya and Aparavidya. Yeah, that is why Angirasa started off with Atapara Yaya Tadaksharam Adigamyate. The main theme of the first part of this Kanda was what? Talking about what is Paravidya and Aparavidya, to provide the clarification, because in the Treta Yuga, those kind of divisions started happening because of our own ignorance. It is not an issue with the Vedas. Vedas are always talking about Paravidyas. Okay? And then, of course, in Dwapara Yuga, it got so worse that at the end of Dwapara Yuga, Paramatma himself had to take avatara as Veda Vyasa and sort things out by actually saving the Vedas and giving Brahma Sutras, so that those Sattvika Jivas can actually use Brahma Sutras and understand that the whole of the Vedas is Paravidya. In Kali Yuga, of course, things are pretty bad at this point, where this Dharma is not even limping, it has just got one leg. And then most folks have become incapable of worshipping people through the Vedas. Not because it is Veda's problem, it is only our problem. We all assume to be supremely busy in our own professional lives. And then, of course, you have people forgetting about the Vedas. And what is the easy solution here? Because we are all apparently very busy individuals, is to recite the names of the Lord. Nothing wrong with it. But do we actually understand the philosophy of reciting of the Lord? And is it the means to something, or is it an end to itself? So those are all the discussions that we need to do. And Angirasa is very clear about it. He said, whoever does tani acharata niyatam satyakamaha yeshavaha pantaha sukrutasya loke. He who does stuff as it was done in Kruta Yuga, that fellow only has a scope, or he has a chance of actually going to Sukrutasya Loka, which is actually reaching liberation. So our approach to whatever we do in Kali Yuga should be as how it was done in Kruta Yuga. That is what Angirasa is saying. And how do folks used to do in Kruta Yuga? They used to do acharata niyatam satyakamaha. So whatever they did was to please Paramatma. That Satya there we know is the name of Paramatma. So for God's pleasure, and also we do everything as a submission to Him. So if we adopt such an approach in life, then there is a chance that you could reach that moksha sthiti, is what Angirasa has said. So he has totally censured dry fire sacrifice with no purpose. He has censured useless ritualism, which most of us are very good at doing these days. Yeah. So he has censured useless ritualism and dry recitation of names. Yeah. So when do these recitation of names and so on happens? It happen during fire sacrifice. For example, you do all sorts of mantras, right? So the question there is, so it's all well and good Angirasa telling us off, but how do we actually convert this fire sacrifice into Paravidya? So by fire sacrifice is only an example, okay? So this is because fire sacrifice was very common in the Vedic times. Now, as we discussed last week, not many people do it. Some people do it religiously, some don't. So we have to kind of adopt this in our other mundane lives, doing our, pujas in our puja room. We probably need to adopt that kind of approach in modern times. But in the Vedic times, the yajna was the primary form of worship. So Angirasa is telling us how to convert fire sacrifice into Paravidya. So that is what we did last week before we finished off this session. Yada lelayate hi archihi samitte havyavahane. So that was what Angirasa said in the very next verse. He said, Archihi, and we spent about Archi. Archi means fire. Agni is also called Archi, and we discussed quite a lot about how fire is the supreme form of worship in Vedic in the Vedic philosophy or in Sanatana Dharma. All other forms of worships using deities in temples is very welcome, but primarily it has to be Agni. Yeah, it has to be Agni for various reasons. We understood the etymology of Agni. So go back to those slides from last week to try and revise all this. So Agni is the highest form of pratika or symbol of worshiping Paramatma. And then Angirasa is going to the next verse. But before we did that, we also understood 7, the philosophy of number 7, because this particular kanda is going to talk about the flames in fire, the 7 flames in fire. And then we need to link this up with the 7 types of rays in sun, which is the 7 wavelength of the sun, Vibgyor. And we need to understand all the 7s that is there in the Vedic philosophy. 7 chandas, 7 chakras, 7 endocrine glands, 7 dhatus, 7 vital forces, 7 sources of transactions, 7 types of flames in Agni, 7 types of rays in sun. And with that anusandhana in our mind, we do yajna, yajna. What is that yajna? It can be Deva Pujana, it could be Sangati Karana, or it could be Dana. They are all called yajna. Yaja. And the yajna is primarily who of Isha Upanishad, incarnation of worship, incarnation of Vishnu, yajna. In Purusha Shukta, all the devatas do an yajna as a cosmic creation. Yeah, so that is also yajna. An act of surrender to Paramatma is yajna, and all the other consumables that we use to throw stuff into the fire, this whole paraphernalia can also be caused as a yajna or a sacrifice in which a deity is worshipped by chanting prayers and mantras and offering ghee into the sacred fire. This is how we understand as yajna. But primarily it is a worship, it is a prayer, it is a praise, it's an offering, an oblation, and a sacrifice to Aksharanamaka Paramatma or Agni Narayana. That is primarily is yajna. So we had that background last week. So let's make some pravesha into a few other basic understandings of fire. Yeah. So yajna, fire sacrifice. So in Vedic times and also even now, yeah, fire sacrifices are broadly classified into 2. Yeah, so go with me on this. I got a couple of slides that gives you an overview of fire sacrifice, because we need to know this before we actually appreciate what is it that Angirasa is telling Shuanaka, who is a Mahashalaha. Yeah. So fire sacrifice can be broadly classified into Smarta rituals and Shrauta rituals. Smarta means Smriti, that comes from the Smritis. Ordained in the Smritis are called Smarta rituals, whereas those that are ordained in the Vedas are called Shrauta rituals. Okay, a classic example of Smriti rituals is what happens during weddings. And we go to various weddings, right? And there is always a fire, there is always a yajna that happens around the time of wedding. Okay, so that is called Vivaha Homa. Okay, just hold on to that idea that Vivaha Homa. And then there is that Agni there, isn't it? There is that fire that is burning, and there is all these mantras that the Purohitas are reciting when there is a wedding ceremony. Okay. And then what happens is the husband and wife who are married, then they carry on with that Agni, and they do that every day in their life. At least that's what they were doing in Vedic times. None of us do it these days. Yeah. But that is what they used to do in the Vedic times, that they used to take that Agni, that Agni from the wedding and maintain that in their house. So that Agni is called Aupasana Agni. Okay, just remember these. Aupasana Agni is important for this Kanda. Okay, that is called Aupasana Agni, also called Smarta Agni or Ekagni as it's called. Okay, and in the Vedic times, a husband and wife used to do Aupasana Yajna twice daily. Okay. Nowadays, you could say, you could equate that to, you go to your puja room and light the deepa in your puja room. That probably you could say is very close to Aupasana Yagni. Yeah, but technically that is the Aupasana. That comes from the Smarta rituals, particularly happening during Vivaha. Okay, Aupasana. Okay. And then on the Shrauta rituals, that which are ordained in the Vedas. There are special rituals, there are special functions by which a husband and wife are given that particular Agni to maintain when they do their samsara. Okay. So that primarily is called Garhapatya Agni. Garhapatya. You will remember that we have discussed it when we did Panchagni in Katha Upanishad. Garhapatya is an Agni that husband and wife, they maintain in the house in the Vedic times. And every day they'll use that Garhapatya Agni and do Agnihotra twice daily. Okay, Agnihotra twice daily. And sometimes they would do a few other bits in the Vedic times. They would take the fire from the Garhapatya. So this Garhapatya Agni is very important. That should be maintained from the start of the Grihastha Ashrama until your body is burnt. Okay. You will be burnt in the same Garihapatya Agni that you maintain from Grihastha. So that is the rules of the Sanatana Dharma. That fire is what is used to burn your body. Okay. That is why in Sanatana Dharma, we burn our body. Okay. Many of us have forgotten this, but that comes from these approaches to life, where You are doing that sacrifice every day in Agnihotra. And finally, when you depart from this body, you offer your body into the same fire that you have maintained when you are a Grihastha. Okay. So that is Agnihotra, Garhapatya Agni. You do Agnihotra every day. Okay. Now that Garhapatya, you can use the fire from the Garhapatya for two other things. One is called Ahavaniya. Okay. That is also called Anvaharya Pachana. Then you have Dakshinagni. Okay. So these are Ahutis that are given to Devas. Dakshinagni is Ahutis given to Pitrus. So this is the Vedic system of doing fire sacrifice, which is, reading and thinking about it is extremely beautiful as to how disciplined that life was in the Vedic times. Now, of course, we are well known for an extremely chaotic life that we lead. Okay. And somehow in our chaotic life, we are making an attempt to squeeze in a little bit of Sanatana Dharma in our lives. Nevertheless, this is what we are talking about. So remember Aupasana Agni, which comes from Vivaha, and Agnihotra, which comes from Garhapatya, which is a Shrauta Adhana or comes from the Vedas. Aupasanam and Agnihotra, remember, husband and wife in Vedic times used to do it every day, morning and evening around sunrise and sunset. Okay. And it is not just that. The Vedic sacrifice in those days was amazing because it was a whole lot of things around it. Because as I said, Shuanaka was a Mahashalaha, right? He used to do huge Vedic sacrifices. How do the Vedic sacrifices technically happen? Number 18 becomes important in Vedic sacrifice. So before I go to number 18, Vedic sacrifice, just want to get folks to start participating and contributing to this. So what is the philosophical significance of number 18? So who wants to go first? We have done this a million times in this forum, but never tired of not revising this. So who is going to take up number 18? We have done number 7. So now let's go to number 18. What's the significance of number 18, please? Suresh.
Number 18 is represents Vishnu. Shodashakala Purusha. So 15 boundaries, 16 is the Jiva, 17th is Mahalakshmi, and 18 is Vishnu.
Beautiful, Sureshji. Perfect answer. So that 18 is carried in Vedic sacrifice. That number 18 that is worship, that 18 is represented in a Vedic fire sacrifice. How is that represented? This is beautiful. So when you do a proper yajna, let's say a Somayaga, for example, there will be 18 folks in that. Okay, so you have priests, they are called Ritviks. Priest of the Rig Veda is called Hotra. The priest of the Yajur Veda is called Advaryu. The priest of the Sama Veda is called Udgatra. Then there are folks called Brahmans or supervisors. So these chaps will ensure that these fellows are reciting the mantras properly. So the head priest of the Rig Veda is called Hotra, Advaryu, Udgatra respectively, and they have assistants. Ardhi, 3, and Padiyana. So let's not go into that. But in Rig Veda, there are 4 priests. Advaryu, there are 4 priests. And in Udgatra, there are 4 priests. Brahman, the supervisors, there are 4. So if you take those, 4 times 4 equals 16. Then there is the Yajamani and the Yajamana. Together, they form 18. So the 18 is the number for Vedas. Because as Sureshji said, 18 is the number for Vishnu. And the Vedic sacrifice, the primary purpose of the Vedic sacrifice is to adore and worship Vishnu. That is actually metaphorically and through Sankhya represented in the way in which a Vedic sacrifice happens. So that itself is interesting. Then, of course, there are various types of yajnas, okay? That is why in Purusha Shukta, it says, Saptasyasan Paridayaha Trishapta Samidaha Krutaha, 3 Shaptaha, 3 times 7, 21. So we also read about 21. So that 21 is also not a by chance number, because there are 3 groups of 7 types of yajnas that were done in the Vedic times. You can find all the things in Bodhaya and Gariha Sutras. Google it and get some information. The reason why I had to do this is there is one type of Agni called Havir Yajnas, and there are 7 of those. And in that 7, you have the ones that are important, that are discussed by Angirasa here: Agnihotra, Darshapurnamasa, Agrayana. So these are all some sacrifices that were done in Vedic times. So if we don't have these background information, we would not be able to appreciate what is it that Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka here about how to do yajna. You are a big Mahashalaha. How should you do the yajna? So that you asked me that question in the first kanda, right? So that what is it that I should know, knowing which my sacrifice actually becomes a paravidya. That is what he had asked in the first kanda. And here Angirasa is giving him an answer, because these are all the yajnas that you are doing, but how should you do that as a paravidya is the introduction to this kanda. So remember Agnihotra, Darsha Purnamasa, Agrayana, Aupasanam, and Agnihotra. So remember these yajnas. Okay. So with that in the background, we make our pravesha to today's verse, which is the new verse for today. So what did he say here? When should you do that archihi? When should you do that homa? Angirasa says, you just don't go to a temple, just there is a fire and you start throwing your havis. Yeah, you don't do that. We may be forced to do that in our temples of modern time, but if somebody asks you to do, you question them and say, are you doing it as how it has been taught in the Vedas? Are you doing it as how Angirasa is actually taught Shuanaka? And what did Angirasa say? Yada lelayate hi archihi samidde havyavahane. So here, Angirasa is giving, how is it that this Vedic sacrifice to be shunned? What are the preconditions? Okay, the preconditions itself is Paravidya. Yeah, that's beautiful. So that is what he is explaining here. So what he is saying is, you have Samit. Samit is what? Samit is the sticks. Yeah, the sticks that you use is called Samit. Yeah, Samit. So he's saying, what do you do in yajnas? You have Samit, right? You have a kunda, then you have a Samit, and then the fire is lit and the fire is burning. So he is giving you some conditions as to when and how you should do the fire sacrifice. You should do that only when the dry sticks are burning in such a way, there's this archi or these flames, yada lelayate, that these flames are dancing. Lelayate means dancing. That is, these flames are dancing. Basically saying that these flames are in all glory, that they're burning extremely well. Okay. That is when you have to actually start doing the fire sacrifice. That is the preliminary rule. Yada lelayate hi archihi samidde havyavahane. Then you start doing havis there. That is when the fire sacrifice should start. So that is the precondition. The next one is interesting. So once you have this precondition that has been sorted out, then you have tada ajya bhagav antarena ahutihi pratipadayet. Okay, so this sounds quite complicated, but when you split it open, it's fairly easy. So when the flames are burning and the flames are dancing, tada, then ajya means what? Ghee. Bhagav, 2 ghees are given to the flame. So that is what proper Vedic yajna should look like. Okay, check it out when you do your when folks of the modern times do havan. Check out whether they are doing like this. Okay, tada ajya bhagav. So you have to take 2 ghees, 2 spoons. Take a spoon, take a ghee, see the flames. You have to see the flames. And the flame has 2 ends. And I've done this figuratively for our benefit as to how that anusandhana should be. So the flame has 2 ends. This tongue has 2 ends. See that is the eyes of Paramatma. We have done this. Agni means Agni Narayana, right? So that is how the pratika should be considered when you do fire sacrifice. That you take the 2 ends of the flame as the eyes of Paramatma. Okay? And to those 2 ends, you give the ghee, ajya. Okay? And how do you do that? You will say, Om Agnaye Swaha, Om Somaya Swaha. Okay? So you would do those 2, And then you give the ajya. And again, watch your Purohit in temple when he does the havan, because he will be doing all this. He'll say, Om Agnaye Swaha, Om Somaya Swaha. What does that mean? It is called Chakshur Homa. Okay, that is, you figuratively see this flame and you see the eyes of the Paramatma on either side when the flame is dancing. At that point, you say, Om Agnaye Swaha. Okay, accept our ajya. What is that Agni? That Agni is Agni Narayana. We have just spent last week, right, talking about the whole etymology of Agni, right? So that should be the Paravidya there. You're not giving it to that material Agni. You should think about this Paramatma as Agni Narayana, and you look at one of these, the right side of the eye of the flame, and you say, Om Agnaye Swaha. Oh, Agni Devata, Agni Narayana, Om. You are called Om. You are Agni Narayana. I offer this ghee to you. Here is a quick quiz. What is the symbolism of ghee in Vedic philosophy? Why do we give ghee? So who is going to take that? It's beautiful. Why do we give ghee? We can do some vegetable oil, right? Why do we give ghee in Vedic sacrifice? Anybody who wants to take that one?
I can do it.
Anand, go for it.
I think ghee represents sattva. So when you the process of making the ghee, when you look at it, when we take the butter and heat it, the residue, the black residue which is left is tamasic. The water content which goes up is rajasic, and what remains, the ghee, is sattvic. I think that's the reason we use ghee.
Beautiful, Anandji. Excellent. Great answer. Great explanation. Anybody else has any other views on why we give ghee? No worries. Yeah. So also, I mean, just to complement what Anandji was saying, also think about ghee comes from what? Ghee comes from cow, right? So you have the cow, you have the milk, then that becomes the curd. The curd, then you churn the curd, then you make the butter, and then butter you clarify it, and then that becomes the ghee. Okay, so think about that cow. What is the philosophical meaning of cow? Who is going to say that? What is gau? Otherwise, cow comes. The English word cow comes from the Sanskrit word gau. Yeah, gauhu. So what is the other meaning of gau? What does gau also stands for? Anybody wants to take this one?
Census.
Sorry, Suresh,
Is
go for it.
Madhu, go. Does it also stand for Vedas or knowledge?
Thank you, Suresh. Sheila ji, you had
I thought it also went for census. Govinda, because he is the one who controls the census.
Sure. Yeah, gau can also be census. That's true. Thank you, Sheila ji. So gau can also mean Vedas, as Suresh ji was mentioning. So here you're looking at the Vedic sacrifice, like that gauhu, Vedas, Vedic mantras, they all form gauhu. And then what do you do with gauhu? You don't just recite it, right? So you have the knowledge, and the knowledge gets converted into bhakti, right? So that bhakti is what the butter is all about. And the highest clarification of that is the ghee. Yeah, people say that Krishna loves butter. Yeah, it's not, it is very metaphorical. Krishna, yes, he likes butter. But what is that butter actually? Butter is devotion. Yeah, so the Vedas is the gau. And that what you get from the Vedas, the knowledge is the milk. That becomes the butter, which knowledge should become bhakti. So that is what is butter. That is what Krishna likes, not this butter of Amul's butter or whatever butter that we have, Lupark butter here or Amul's butter. That is not what Krishna likes. The butter there signifies devotion, right? So similarly, that highest clarification of the butter is the ghee. And as Anandji so beautifully said, it also represents purity, that pure amala bhaktishta tat sadhanam, as Jayatirtha said. So that is why that ghee is very important in that. So we should never lose sight of those kind of ideas when we go to temples and witness or participate in havans. So that is called Chakshur Homa. One side you have Agnaye Swaha. So that Agni there is Agni Narayana, because Agre Nayati, Agrayatvad, Agre Nayati, Attim, Angam Nayati, Agam Nayati. All those ideas should come. So on the right side, you put the ghee and say Om Agnaye Swaha. Then on the left side, you will put and say Om Somaya Swaha. So these two are the preliminaries and they form what is called Chakshur Homa. So what is Soma? Who wants to take that up? I've got the answers here. The Soma itself is important. We have done Soma when we were doing Katha Upanishad and also a little bit in Isha Upanishad. We were talking about Soma. What is that Soma? Anybody wants to come in and help us out understand what is Soma? Why do we do Om Somaya Swaha? Okay, no problem. The Soma, etymology of Soma. So go back to those slides. Yeah, Soma is a very deep philosophical word. It is not some Somapana. Some people think this is some intoxicants that the Vedic fellows used to drink and so on. Maybe partly true, but that is not the philosophy of this. Okay, so Soma can mean so many things. It can mean a substance, but actually it represents liquid state. It could mean a plant, Somalata. It could mean a mental state. It could mean a divine force. It could mean an astronomical body in Vedas. So think about Soma. Soma is moon, right? And in Sanskrita and in various Indian languages, we say Somavar. Yeah. Somavar becomes Monday in English. Why? Because it was called Moon Day. And these fellows are so lazy that they removed one of the O's and they converted it into Monday. So the Monday actually comes from Moon Day, which actually comes from Somvar, which comes from Soma, which is Chandra. Okay, so again, these are all nicked from our ancient Vedic astrologies and astronomy. There is 100% no doubts about this. Every word is nicked from Sanskrit, 100%. And the Somvar and Monday is a classic example. But here is the philosophical way of looking at it. We are looking at Paravidya, right? Soma, Sa, Oma. Okay. Anybody remember a word that we did in Katha Upanishad, which also sounds like Soma? I'm going to give a clue. Anybody wants to say Hamsa Gayatri? Any ideas in Hamsa Gayatri? We did in Katha Upanishad with Yama taught Nachiketa the Hamsa Gayatri.
Is it Soham, Madhu?
Close. So there is a word very similar to Soma. Vyoma. So it's a Vyoma Shutishat. Hamsa Suchishat. And all that, the Hamsa Gayatri, Vyoma. So V-Oma, similarly, Sa-Oma, Soma. Okay, Saha, Omaha, Oma, Saha, Oma, Om plus A. So look at all this. Om is Narayana, Oma is Lakshmi. Okay, these two fellows are all pervasive together. Saha, Omaha. Yeah, this Saha, this Vishnu is always with Oma, which is Lakshmi. So he is called Somaha. Okay, so Vishnu is primarily called Somaha. Yeah, so that is also very interesting when you look at etymology of Somaha. Similarly, Vyoma of Katha Upanishad is V-Oma. Okay, Oma, there is Oma, Saha, Lakshmi. Yeah, V-Oma means this fellow who is Vishnu, he is always with the Oma, but he is Vilakshana. He is very different from Oma. That is why Vishnu is also called Vyoma. Okay, Vyoma is also called space in a very superficial sense, but primarily Vyoma means Narayana. Okay, so Soma means Narayana again. So that is what you are doing here. Agnaye Swaha means Agni means Narayana. Om Somaya Swaha means you are again saying, I give offerings to you, O Narayana. So this is Paravidya. This is what Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka. Okay, so it's really beautiful. So then what happens here? Yada lelayatehi archihi samidde havyavahane tada ajya bhagav. Okay, so ajya given in these two ends. Antarena ahutihi. Okay. In between these two is what you are supposed to anusandana, that the base of the flame is where the mouth of Narayana is. Okay, so that is how that fire sacrifice should happen in Paravidya. So the base of the flame is the mouth of Narayana. Is how you do Anusandhana. Yeah, this is for worship. This is how you do the worship. So when you look at this, see that is what Angirasa says. Look at the flames. See these two flames, all these flames dancing. One end is Agnaye Swaha, other end is Somaya Swaha. Then you take the ahuti. The ahuti can be rice, it can be milk, it can be so many other things. The havis that you give is the ahuti. The havis that you take and pour into the fire is the ahuti. You just don't throw it. Okay, so again, we do this. We just throw it. We should not. Angirasa says, see the base of the flame, which is where the mouth of this Narayana is. And there you give ahutihi pratipadayed, clear instruction. That is where you have to do ahuti. And when you do ahuti, you know what you should do? As I said, we need to check this out in our own havans. When that ahuti is given, the Hotru will say, Om Bhu Swaha, Om Bhuvas Swaha, Om Suvas Swaha, Om Bhur Bhuvas Suvas Swaha. So 4 ahutis are given, okay, into the base of the fire. Okay. So this is how a proper Vedic havan should happen. Okay. Om Agnaye Swaha, Om Somaya Swaha on the flames, and then Om Bhuswaha, Bhuvaswaha, Suvaswaha, Om Bhur Bhuvaswaswaha. 4 ahutis are given. Okay, remember 4, and this is where the Paravidya comes of how to apply it in deep philosophical worship of Paramatma. So what do we have here? We have Bhu, we have Bhuvaha, we have Suvaha. Okay. So who is going to help us understand what is Bhu, what is Bhuvaha, and what is Swaha? Okay. That will explain to us as to why we have the system in place to do Vedic sacrifice. And we have done that in this, I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, when we did 3 or 4 sessions on Gayatri. Yeah. Pranava, Vyakriti, and Gayatri. So who is going to tell us what is Pranava, what is Vyakriti, and what is Gayatri, and what is being said here? Is it Pranava, Vyakriti, or Gayatri? And explain to us what do Bhu, Bhuvaha, and Swaha actually stand for. So who wants to take this up? No problem. Okay, I'll do that. So when we did the Gayatri mantra, this is, you have to look at what Brahma Gayatri and Vishwamitra Gayatri, right? Vishwamitra Gayatri has got 3 components. Pranava, which is Om. Then Vyakriti, which is Bhur, Bhuvas, Swaha. Then you have the Gayatri, right? Gayatri, 3 verses. Gayatri, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Pada 1, Pada 2, and Pada 3, 24 syllables. Then that, of course, becomes Purusha Shukta and Rig Veda, Yajur Sama Veda, etc., etc. So here, that Vyakriti, you are saying Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha. Okay. Then you have to ask, what is the meaning of Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha? If Agni means Narayana, and if Soma means Narayana, then Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha, what do they mean? So who wants to take that up? I'm persisting here for contributions. Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha. What is our understanding of Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha, which we seem to be saying quite often?
These representing the 7 lokas, Om Bhu, Om Bhuvam, Swaha, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satya.
Yeah, beautiful, Sureshji. That's one interpretation, one way of looking at it. Any other ways of looking at it? Okay, no worries. So, as Sureshji said, there are 7 levels of material creation. 7, it can be 3, it can be 7, it can be 14, but they all say the same thing. Yeah. So, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha in one way can be taken as the 3 levels. For example, Bhu is where we are. Then Swaha is the heavenly existence, and in between is the Bhuvaha. So that is one way of looking at it. But that is not Paravidya. That is still an Aparavidya approach. And to understand what it is as Paravidya, we have to go to Acharya's Rigbhashyam. So what did Acharya tell us in Rigbhashyam? He said, Om Ashesha Gunodhara iti Narayano Apyaso Purno Bhutivaro Ananta Sukho Yad Vyakhritir Iritaha. Never ever forget that when we say Bhur Bhuvas Suvaha. Bhu means Bhuma. Bhuma na alpe sukhamasti. Okay. Bhuma means Purna. Who is Purna? Narayana is Purna. So Bhu stands for Purna. That is why Acharya said Bhu means Purna. Bhu means Bhuman. It is a shortened version of Bhuma. Okay. Bhuvaha. Bhuvaha means Bhuti Varaha. Okay. Bhuti Varo is Bhuvaha. Bhuti Varaha. That which has the highest levels of qualities. Bhuti Varaha. Bhuvaha. Suvaha. Swaha or Suvaha. Ananta Sukaha. Ananta Suko Suvaha. Okay. So when I talk about Purna, I talk about infinite auspicious attributes and infinite bliss. I'm only talking about Narayana here or Vishnu here. So that Akara there is Vishnu, Ukara there is Vishnu, Makara there is Vishnu. And when I say Om Bhu Swaha, I'm saying, oh, you are the complete Purna Narayana. I offer my Ahuti to him. Bhuvaha, you are of the highest infinite auspicious attributes, and I'm offering it to you, Narayana. Om Suvaha Swaha, you are infinitely blissful, O Narayana, I am offering it to you. That is how you do the Paravidya, which is what Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka here. Okay. And then what do you do finally? Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Swaha. That is what your Ritvik is supposed to do. Check him out next time if he is doing this or not. Yeah. So if he is not doing this, reject him. Okay. So this is how Angirasa has taught that he had to do this as a worship of Narayana. Now look at this. 4. Om Bhuswaha, Om Bhuhaswaha, Om Suvaswaha, Om Bhur Bhuvaswaswaha. Why 4? Again, that is the 4 Vyuha forms of Narayana. Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, and Vasudeva. So you are also doing that contemplation of Paramatma or Narayana or Vishnu in every mantra that you are doing. Yeah, that is how you transform a fire sacrifice to a Paravidya. So teaches Angirasa to Shuanaka. Okay, so this may appear a little bit complicated, but go back to all those sessions that we did on Gayatri Mantra and on Katha Upanishad, where all these words come. So we just need to apply all this here, and whatever we have learned, then we put it into fire sacrifice and make it into a Paravidya, which is what Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka. And he says, when you are doing this Mahashala and big yajnas, when this is being thrown, this is how you do the Anushandana. And that is why our Acharya's Rig Bhashyam becomes supremely important when we do all these Vedic sacrifices, to actually understand the Paravidya here, rather than to do it so mechanically. You know, these fellows say some mantras, we throw something, he does not know what he's saying, we don't know what we are hearing, and it just becomes so mundane and to be honest, boring. So when we look at it from a Paravidya perspective, then it all falls into place as to why our Vedic rishis used to do these mantras and do it. That is as a Paravidya. So the next question is, we will close today's session with this. So when do you do this Paravidya? So I've said, when do you do this Paravidya? I've said, you're saying all these mantras, and how do you do it? So that is why our Agnihotra needs to come into our memory. And that is why I did this Agnihotra and Upasana Yajna. And what are these? Upasana is Smriti Yajna, Smriti Agni, and Agnihotra is Shrauta Agni. Okay. So Angirasa says, you do all these fire sacrifice and there are rules made. You can't just do it whenever you want. Our Vedic rishis have put various rules, and that is for a reason, and I'll come to that next. There is a reason why Agnihotra is done at sunrise and Agnihotra is done at sunset. That is where the Agnihotra is done. Okay. So what is Agnihotra? Agnihotra is what you have a fire. As I said before, all grihasthas do it until death, where they offer their own body to the Agnihotra that they have been doing every day. And it is done every day. And it is done twice daily. It is done at sunrise and it is done at sunset. And that is how the consumables look like. You got a copper. It needs to be in copper. Yeah, you can't just take anything else. It has to be in copper. You have to have cow dung. You have to have ghee, and you have to have rice. Yeah, rice, not rice, not cooked rice, but rice. That is the consumables. Okay. And if anybody interested in Agnihotra, because I am very much, you can buy it from Amazon. Okay. You don't have to go to some Yagnashala somewhere in the Himalayas. You can actually order it from your mobile phone. You can buy your Agnihotra set. Not very expensive. You can buy it. It costs about 60-70 pounds. You can bet the whole thing and do it. There are big Agnihotra facilities in Germany that do it. That's a big deal. And it's shocking and impressive when I learned about this and I was doing research that folks in Germany do Agnihotra every day, but we fellows don't do it. Shame on us. They can do it because there is a lot of science and philosophy in Agnihotra. So Angirasa is saying, after having understood that Paravidya of how to do the fire sacrifice, now you should do that fire sacrifice in various fire sacrifice that I've just told you. Yeah, various types of fire sacrifice. The rules are still the same. You have to do with the same anusandhana, these fire sacrifices. And these fire sacrifices have to be done properly at the right time. So that is what the very next mantra is. Yasya Agnihotram Adarsha Purnamasam Anagrayanam Atitir Varjitam Cha Ahutam Avaishvadevam Avidinahutam Asaptaman Lokan Hinasti. Yeah. So that fellow who does not follow the rules and that fellow who does not do these fire sacrifices properly, again the number 7 comes there. Asaptaman Lokan Hinasti. So beautiful, so many 7s that come here. So what does that mean? So before we go into that, Agnihotra, right? I told you about this fire sacrifice where you have a copper pit and you have a cow dung and then you put ghee and you light the fire. When the flames are dancing, you put the ghee into the fire and then you put the rice into the fire and you say the mantras similar to what I have told you here, Agni Swaha, Somaya Swaha, whatever that mantra is, but it will all be one among this. Okay, you say that when sunrise and sunset. Okay, this I just want to illustrate here. If anybody wants to know what is the sunrise and sunset, and when you have to do the Agnihotra, okay, I can actually recommend you an app. There is an app called Agnihotra Buddy. Yeah, so just Google it. Get this app out. It's called Agnihotra Buddy. It comes from Germany. Okay, and if you go to Agnihotra Buddy and you put your postcode, it will actually tell you at what particular time is your sunrise and what your particular time is your sunset is. You should do the Agnihotra within 60 seconds of sunrise and within 60 seconds of sunset. Beautiful. These are amazing stuff. That's how they used to do in Vedic times. And our German friends have actually mastered this. They have got their own app of actually doing this. Okay. Why do we have to do this? The whole Agnihotram. Okay. So I have kind of separated this into Aparavidya and Paravidya. Okay. Aparavidya. What are all the benefits of a fire sacrifice? A typical example of a fire sacrifice is Agnihotram. Okay. I've just listed a few. I've taken it from some site that I found very interesting. I'll just read it out for you. Agnihotra brings clarity, focus, and makes you stronger, able to accomplish and do things and work on your inner energies. Vedic Agnihotra relieves tension on the mind. A magnetic field is created which neutralizes the negative energy and reinforces positive energy. When Vedic Agnihotra is performed, the Agnihotra smoke gathers particles of harmful radiation in the atmosphere and on a very subtle level neutralizes the radioactive effects. Nothing is destroyed, merely changed. Sit at Agnihotra fire and breathe in the smoke, which goes quickly into the bloodstream and lungs. This and the claim there is this has excellent effect on the circulatory system, and even more so if the Agnihotra ash is ingested. The smoke has a good effect on the brain and the nervous system, it is said. Vedic Agnihotra is also done for healing. That is, people who are seeking healing attend the rituals and notice the effect in the following weeks or months. When Agnihotra fire is burned, there is not just energy from the fire, but subtle energies are generated and thrust into the atmosphere by fire. Much healing energy emanates from the Agnihotra pyramid. Vedic Agnihotra has the ability to neutralize pathogenic bacteria. Part of Agnihotra is getting into sync with the energy of the day, like riding a wave of the energy of the sun. Agnihotra benefits the persons doing it all those present, and the good energy extends for some distance. Vedic Agnihotra has excellent effect on the circulatory system. Agnihotra benefits both spiritual and mundane, and for those who do it, are said to be enormous. Agnihotra renews brain cells, revitalizes the skin. Agnihotra purifies the blood. Plants receive nutrition in Agnihotra atmosphere. So these are all some of the list of benefits that are described for Agnihotra, and the reason why the Vedic rishis used to do it from a Aparavidya perspective. Okay, so you can do your further research on Agnihotra, and if those of you interested in doing it, I think it'll be an amazing experiment for yourself. You can experiment it yourself. But that is Aparavidya for all these material benefits. Angirasa is telling that is all well and good, but there is a Paravidya aspect to it. What is it? As I have just described, that it is a dedication to the Lord. And when you do this as a dedication to the Lord, you not only get all these benefits, but you also get the supreme benefit, which is what? Eventually, moksha sadhana. Eventually, it will take you to liberation, is what Angirasa is teaching. So we will close today's session with this particular verse, which is relevant for all that we have discussed in the beginning of this today's satsang. So, Asya Agnihotram. You do the Agnihotram for all these benefits, as I've told you. But you just don't do just the Agnihotram. The person who does Agnihotram has a huge responsibility, says Angirasa, that you should also do other yajnas. If you're keeping Agnihotras, you should do other yajnas, he is saying. And you should do those other yajnas properly. If you don't do it properly, you're in difficulty, is what Angirasa is kind of giving him some careful note there. Why? Because look at this. You need to split open these verses. What is he saying? Yasya Agnihotram Adarsha Purnamasam. I've told you about what is Darsha and what is Purna. They are one of the 7 Havir Yajnas. Anagrayanam. Agrayana is one of the 7 yajnas that used to be done in Vedic times. Any person, Grihastha, who has an Agnihotra in the house should definitely do what is called Darsha and what is called Purnamasa. Okay. Anagrayanam. Agrayana means there is one particular Vedic sacrifice that you do around harvest. I'll come to that in a minute. And then Atithi. You should always offer it to Atithis and uninvited guests. Okay. So those are all the rules that they are giving for social and societal harmony also. Yeah. Darsha Purnamasa. So what is Darsha and what is Purnamasa? So that is all done according to the waxing and waning of the moon. Okay. Darsha is done on an Amavase, when there is no moon day. In a no moon day, you do a special Vedic sacrifice called Darsha Yaga. And when the moon is full, you do Purnamasa. So those are all the 2 things that you do. And then you do what's called Agrayana. Agrayana means when there is a harvest, when there is a first harvest that you had, that first harvest, you have to offer it to the fire. Okay. So that is called Agrayanam. And then every yajna that you do, you should go out and see if there is somebody who is needy, who needs to be fed that day. So you feed them and then you eat. Yeah. So that person is a guest is called Atithi, right? Okay. So remember all these words. Purna, Masa, Agrayana. But what has Angirasa said? If you don't do any of this, Adarsha Purna Masam, Anagrayanam, Atitir Varjitam. Varjitam is not offering food to guests. Yeah. If you don't do this, you have to do this if you do an Agnihotra, but if you don't do this as a offering to Paramatma, Yasya Agnihotram Adarsha Purnamasam Anagrayanam Atitir Varjitam Cha Ahutam. That is where the Aupasana Agni comes from. Ahutam means Aupasana Agni. That all as Grihasthas we are supposed to have. We should have actually got it from our wedding fire. When we did that wedding and that Agni, Sakshi, whatever that we went around in circles, right? We may all remember. We all went around in circles and then something else happened in the wedding. So that fire, you're supposed to bring home and look after it and do Aupasanam. Okay? Just reminding, none of us do it, but that is what people used to do in the Vedic times. Ahutam. Hutam means aupasanam. Ahutam means not doing that. Avaishwadevam, if you don't do Vaishwadeva. Okay, so this is where I put a bit of a question mark for us to think about. What is Vaishwadeva? Is anybody do you guys do Vaishwadeva? I'd be just interested to know that you do Vaishwadeva whenever you have time, weekends perhaps. Vaishwadeva, anybody wants to say what is Vaishwadeva? I've kind of written it there here already. So Vaishwadeva, you have to do it. Veda says you have to do it every day. None of us are doing. At least weekends or sometime when we have time, I think we should do Vaishwadeva. And Angirasa is saying if you don't do Avaishwadeva means if you don't do Vaishwadeva, then doing Agnihotra is useless. So what is Vaishwadeva? This is very interesting concept. The food we consume every day goes through several processes, isn't it? Steps that cause himsa to plants and insects. Who knows how many insects we have killed when we cut plants and vegetables? Cutting, grinding, roasting, and boiling. Okay. So our Vedic rishis were thinking about other jivas and other living things in the food that they eat. They say, look, when you cut and cook these foods, you're creating himsa to these. And you're doing papa. And he says you offer it to Paramatma. And say this and use this as a prayaschitta of all the sins that you do, consuming plants. Forget about animals that some people do. Consuming plants itself has got all these violence that happens. And when you do Vaishwadeva, you are actually praying to the Lord to say, look, I'm doing all this, please forgive me. Yeah. And also, Vaishwadeva is also a worship to Vishvedevas. And there are quite a number of Vishvedevas, right? There are 10 Vishvedevas, as discussed in Gita 11:22. Vishve, Ashvina, go to that verse. And Bhavishya Purana, I've got a reference here which actually gives a name of all these 10 Vishvedevas that are worshipped in Vaishwadeva that we have to do every day. It says Vedic system, but we don't do it. In our household, we try and follow this on a Saturday and Sunday on a regular basis. There's just only one time we can do this. So that is Vaishwadeva. Okay. When do you do it? Twice daily. What do? You give anna and ghee. So this is, you put it in the fire. We don't have a fire at home. We actually put that rice into the gas that we are cooking. Yeah, that is the closest fire that we have at home. So we put it in that gas. And then what do? Take that rice, go to your backyard and put it to the birds. So that you first feed the birds and the animals that are struggling out there to find food. You give it to them first and then you consume at home. So these are all such high levels of philosophies that our Vedic rishis have taught us as to how to conduct one's life and daily livings, not just looking after ourselves, but also all the animals that are around us, that we look after them. And only then the environment, is fine. Otherwise, we don't. Otherwise, the environment gets degraded in great depths. Yeah, so that we see all around us. So those are all the ideas about Hutam, Avaishwadeva. Okay. Avidina Hutam, if you don't follow vidhis and you do all this, whatever time you want, then what happens? Asaptaman lokan hinasti. Saptaman, 7. Yeah. Lokan can be various things. Lokas means the various lokas that Sureshji was mentioning. Satyaloka, Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Suvarloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka, and Satyaloka. Okay. So those lokas, it could also mean those lokas. 7 lokas. So what he's saying is, if you don't do these things properly as a paravidya, that is what he's saying. You do it as a paravidya, you do it properly. You do all these vidhis that have been given in Vedas. If you don't do this, you will never reach these higher levels of existence. Bhuvar, Suvar, Jana, Tapal, Mahar, and Loka. Hinasti. You will never get there. Okay. Or even more dangerous way of interpreting this is 7 generations of your family will also have sin, is what they say. Not just you, your father, grandfather, great-grandfather, your son, your grandson, your great-grandson, your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. So for 7 generations, there will be the sins that can be accumulated is what the censuring is there. That means, that doesn't mean we should not do it. I think what Angirasa is saying is, do it as a paravidya, not as a mechanical exercise with no understanding of philosophy behind this. Okay? do it as Paravidya purely as a submission to Narayana. Okay. So after saying that, then he gives which is what we are going to do in our next session, which is probably likely to be in the new year. So then he gives, that fire that I told you, the fire is Yada Lelayatehi Archihi Samidde Havyavahane. That verse. Now he qualifies what are those 7 flames of fire. Beautiful. In Mundaka Upanishad, you will find this verse. And the Vedas have actually given name to the 7 flames of fire. Kali, Karali cha Manojava cha Sulohita ya cha Sudhumravarana Sulingini Vishwaruchi cha Devi Lelayamana iti Sapta Jihvaha. So this is the beauty of Vedic philosophy of our rishis. Yeah, this is beautiful. They've actually given names to the flames. Forget about the 7 wavelengths, which we call violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Our Vedic rishis gave these flames 7 names and the Abhimani Devatas of those 7 names. Okay. So it could be like the black, the terrific, the swift as a mind, the red, the smoky color, the sparkling, and the all shining. Yeah, so that is what that Sapta Jihvaha is. Kali, Karali cha, Manojava cha, Sulohita ya cha, Sudhumravarana, Sfulingini, Vishwaruchi cha Devi, Lelayamana iti Sapta Jihvaha. Complete analysis of the fire sacrifice is what Angirasa is given. And by that, when we do our Havan, let us check this out. Practical, put it into practice. That is what the Sapta Archihi is. That very first we saw that verse, right? And that is what Rig Veda also talks about. Sapta Yahvaha of the Surya. Tam Suryam Haratiha Sapta Jihvaha. We've done that. So the 7 horses, remember that. So the 7 is important. And that 7 has so many philosophical significance. And those 7 flames, each flame, you consider that as Agni Narayana. And the Agni Narayana has got 2 eyes where you give Agneya Swaha, Somaya Swaha. Then you look at the mouth and you give 4 offerings, which represents the 4 Vyuha forms of the Lord, as well as the various adjectives of Paramatma, Bhu, Bhuvaha, Swaha, as taught to us by Acharya and Rig Bhashya. So when we do that, then that worship becomes fruitful and actually purposeful, not just mechanical. It actually becomes a Paravidya. So we will carry on with that. Now the question is, what is the big deal? You have said you have to do this, you have given these rules, do this fire sacrifice. There are 7 types of flames, there are 7 rays of the sun. What is the link made? What is the purpose of all this? That is what we are going to be talking about next session, because that actually takes us to the philosophy of Devayana. Yeah, the root of the sun. What is that root of the sun? The root of the sun doesn't mean we go to the Surya Mandala and go somewhere. No, it is an entirely different concept in Vedic philosophy. What is the Devayana? Through the rays of the sun. And then there is the Pitruyana. So this whole ideas of discussions about this then will have to happen, because that is what Angirasa is teaching. If you do the fire sacrifice like that, or if you do any sacrifice like that approach, then you will follow the path of the Devayana. If you don't do that, you will follow the paths of the Pitruyana. So next time we will look at all this, what is Devayana, Pitruyana, link it up with the various chakras and so on, okay? So on that note, I will close today's session. I hope it was interesting. It's a bit complicated, but it's a very beautiful way of looking at Vedic fire sacrifice as taught by Angirasa Rishi to Shuanaka. And through him, we understand how it ought to be done, or how we need to do our Anusandhana and do worship next time when we go to a Havan in the temple, or we do our own Agnihotra at home. Okay. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. If there are any questions, we can take it up now. There are 2 comments in the chat. Sahasra Archihi, Sapta Jihvaha, Saptaidaha, Sapta Vahana. Yeah. So Anand, you want to come in? You put a very beautiful comment. Go for it.
Yeah, while you were talking about the offerings to be made when the flame is fully lit, which means the 7 flames have to come in, 7 colors. So probably that's the reason in Vishnu Sahasranama, Vishnu, one of the names is Sapta Jihva. So the second part of it was Saptaidha I understand that as 7 offerings. So while looking at your presentation, I thought there were about 6 offerings. Does that last offering mean to Narayana? So that was my question and a comment as well.
Yeah, so a very, very beautiful comment, Anandji. The Sapta Jihva is described in Vishnu Sahasranama as Narayana's name itself. That is beautiful. I didn't quite follow what your question was. I don't know if others are able to answer this, because I will have to go back and refer. I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, but maybe if you want to clarify and give us an explanation on it, it sounds very interesting.
Because in Vishnu Sahasranama, Vishnu is by 2 names. He is described by the 2 names. Sapta Jihva we can understand, the 7-tongued Vishnu, and that's why we offer all the things in the fire, thinking to make it Paravidya. We think that the 7 flames is Vishnu, and we offer. So there are 2 wordings in Vishnu Sahasranama. There, Sapta Jihva and Saptaidha. I need to know the correct meaning of Saptaidha. I thought 7 offerings. That's why he's called Saptaidha.
Yeah, Harish, go for it. I don't know whether he's Harish.
No, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's connected, but there's also this concept of Havir Yagna. There are like 7 offerings as part of Havir Yagna, and I know the Agnihotra and Darshapurna Masa is part of it. So I'm just wondering, Anandji, to pile on to what you were saying, is that the same as the Havir Yagnas?
Yeah,
I have
interesting.
no
Okay,
idea.
let's do a homework for all of us. Let's check it out.
Okay.
I'll also go back to Vishnu Sahasranama. It's a good opportunity to try and understand that. Thank you, Harish. Yeah, interesting.
But
Yes.
also, Madhuji, there's one shloka in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 11, I think, Vasunam Pavakasmi. So once again, it goes to say that Agni is none other than Narayana himself, and we do worship him.
Yeah. So absolutely right. So that's why sometimes I don't know whether I should be angry or I should be very pitiful on these fellows, where some people talk about, our Sanata Dharma was worshipping all these material, natural elements. They were doing fire sacrifice because they were in awe of all the natural elements, and they were worshipping. These were cavemen who were worshipping the fire. I've seen, sadly, many of these scholars of this part of the world writing that way. I don't know whether I should feel sorry for them, because they just don't know what Agni actually means. Agni is Narayana, not some material Agni. So very well put, Anandji. Thank you so much. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, so if there are no further questions, just to make a couple of announcements here. So sorry, yes.
There's one, Madhuji, you said Vaishwadeva. Is it something related also Vaishwanara Agni that you mean? There is any connection? I just wasn't sure. So
yeah, sure. Yeah, Vaishwadeva. So Vaishwadeva is you do that to outside, and then you give to the birds, and then before you consume, you put that food in your mouth to the Vaishwanara, right? That Jataragni, as Acharya talks about, that Vaishwadeva in your in your abdomen. So Vaishwanaraha that's the Vaishwanara. But again, that Vaishwanara also is Vishnu. Then that Vaishwadeva also in the Paramamukti Vritti is also Vishnu. So I think, yes, you're right, Jagdish. Thanks for that interesting insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madhuji, one of the question I had is, given the importance of Agnihotra, any thoughts you or others have in why it is not, as much followed? I mean, we talked so much about Sandhya Vandana work, but, Agnihotra is almost never discussed.
Yeah, you're right. That's unfortunate, isn't it? But to be honest, Harish, many of the traditional families, the proper Vaidika families, they still do the Agnihotra that I've heard of. So people do it, but of course, in the modern times, nobody has time. Even doing Sandhya Vandana itself is a big ordeal, right? So it's all about this artificial thing that we have created to ourselves. But if we are true, I mean, some people may have a different view on this. It's all about convenience in the modern times. But if those of us, if we can make time for ourselves, then I think doing Agnihotra can be pretty good to our soul and also to our mind and also to the environment and for the people who are living around us. That's what I'm reading. There's so much stuff around Agnihotra that is there. And as I said, there are folks in Germany that practice it very, very seriously. In the West, they do that. And in Bharatvarsha, you have all these traditional families that do that. And if you actually go to Krishna temple in Udupi, if you go to Krishna temple in Udupi, when Naivedya is happening to Krishna, there is Agnihotra that is happening in behind the Krishna temple. And after the Naivedya has happened, there is an Atiti who is given offered food. So in many of these temples where, when Acharya put all these systems in place, many of these temples, they do Agnihotra every day. So the Agnihotra is there. It may not be in limelight, but it is there. And I know many folks who actually do Agnihotra on a regular basis. So maybe we use Angirasa's second kanda as an inspiration and try it out. So I think trying it out is and see whether it gives benefit. Everything is in experiments, right? So I think we should do it. Modern days, they don't, because they've just got all these, deities made of stone and metal, and they think that is convenient and let's do it. Fair enough, that nobody's saying you shouldn't do it. But if the way the Sanatana says, the Vidhi is, if you want to really elevate yourself to higher levels, try doing that. So maybe we should, I'll leave it to individual discretion as to whoever wants to do it, but it is actually done in Krishna temple and all the matas it is done. And anybody wants to come here and share their thoughts or experiences with this? Is anybody doing Agnihotra at this point?
Can I just make a comment? I mean, I might be completely wrong, but I think this Havana has to be done outside the house or in an open space. And I mean, if you come from very densely populated cities, it is very difficult practically to be doing. It's not fireproof in that sense. And secondly, I know you described that you should be eating the ash, or you should be, taking the flames. But there is an issue about if it is in a closed place of carbon monoxide and other things. So I don't know how that balances with the Vedic view. In those times was the village looked different than what it is looking now. That's my view.
Sure, Devalji, yeah, all valid points. So the recommendations there is, if you're serious about Agnihotra, you have to do it outside in your backyard. You can do it outside where there is all these kind of hazards are not there. Or indoors, if you want to do it, you have to do it, of course, let's not, we have fireplaces, isn't it, in winter here. We put all the sticks and we have our own fireplaces with chimneys that feed all the flame and carbon monoxide outside. So we use those chimneys to keep us warm in winter. But folks who practice Agnihotra, they have actually transformed the chimneys into Agnihotras, and they also do it indoors. So there are all sorts of health and safety. So it is not for the novice. You really need to get the systems in order before you do it. But if you do it, and when you do it, the legend is it's got lots of benefits. It is stated in the Veda, so it has to be true. Veda is Apaurusheya, and it is Swataha Pramanya, and it's of supreme knowledge and authority. And if it says that, then we have to take it at its face value. We have just come with various other reasons that we don't want to do it. Carbon monoxide, carcinogenicity, all sorts of stuff. But we just need to leave it to individual discretions, I suppose, here. So excellent. So great discussion. Thank you so much. So a few announcements for next week. So next week we got Gita Chintana Chapter 2, Part B, led by Anand Kulkarni ji. So Anand, do you want to come in and give a brief overview of how this is going to happen next Sunday, please?
Yes, Madhuji. The next Gita Chintan is on 17th, which is next Sunday. So we carry on from where we left, the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga. We will start off with the unfinished business with Arjuna about dharma of Kshatriya, which is followed by a brief introduction to yoga, part of Sankhya Yoga. And this will be followed by the introduction to Karma Yoga. So we have decided that we will take it as 2 more sessions. The next session will be session B, and then there will be a 3rd session rather than rushing, because this is such an important chapter. I think we need to spend a little bit time on this chapter. So the next one will be on 17th, same time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anandji. Fantastic. And thanks to the team that's coordinating this. Looking forward to that. Then after that, we are going to take a break for Christmas and New Year. So I think many of us will have plans to meet with family, friends, travel, holiday, etc. So we're going to take a break for 3 weeks and restart our Upanishad Chintana in the first week of January. Okay, so that's how it is looking like for the next 3 to 4 weeks. So let's close off the new year. Let's close off this year with a great discussion of Gita Upanishad Chintana next Sunday. And as you know, Gita Jayanti is also upon us fairly soon. It's on the 23rd, but because of all the Christmas, New Year kind of things that's going on, we are going to organize a Gita Jayanti function sometime in the middle of January or thereabouts with external speakers and all that. So look out for that as well. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. And Suresh, do you want to take us through Om Chintana and we close today's session?
Thank you.
Krishna Pranamastu. So take care, everyone, and stay safe. See you next Sunday for Gita Chintana.
Guru Brahma.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.